Hey everyone, it's Sammy from Push Square, and I'm going to make a video today that I've wanted to make for almost 20 years now, and it's my first impressions of the Shenmue I and II re-release, which is due out on the PlayStation 4 this week. Now, because I got the review code quite late, I've only had time to properly revisit Shenmue I so far, and that's why this isn't a review, but I have spent a little bit of time with Shenmue II just to see that everything is consistent in the kind of re-release and the quality of the ports, and I'm going to touch on that in this video as well. Now, one quick note, I do call it Shenmue. I know officially it's probably Shenmue, but when these games first came out, you only read about them in magazines, no one talked about them, there was no YouTube or anything like that, and unfortunately for me, it's stuck in my head and will forever be Shenmue, so I apologise for that. But with all that said, I'm going to get into my impressions now. Please do remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's talk Shenmue.
A pitch-black night unfolds with the morning star as its only light. And thus the saga begins.
So I think even in 2018, there's something definitely unusual about Shenmue. While most games strive to create lush, idyllic fantasy worlds, the mid-80s Japanese setting of Shenmue is a claustrophobic dive, and it's inhabited by everyday people living very uninspiring lives. But I think it's this slice of life format that's made the series a mainstay in gaming culture for almost 2 decades now, despite the original Dreamcast releases being relative commercial failures considering how much Sega invested in them. So Shenmue I and II has been restored but not necessarily remastered for the PlayStation 4, and it's going to give a new generation the opportunity to experience Ryo Hazuki's revenge mission anew. But what I want to talk about in this video is if the conversion's up to scratch and how the classics hold up to modern scrutiny. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, late review code means that I've only really had the opportunity to properly revisit the first game so far, but like I said, D3T, who has handled this port, its efforts seem to be consistent across both versions, and among the improvements to the originals is the addition of a new high-resolution rendering option, which improves the image quality for like modern televisions, and also cleans up ugly graphical artifacts like jagged edges and stuff like that. Now, widescreen support has also been implemented, though you can opt for the original 4:3 ratio if you prefer, and in all cases you can toggle these settings in-game, so you're never forced to choose how you'd like the titles to be displayed. This luxury also extends to the voice options as well, with Japanese and English dialogue included as an option in both games for the very first time.
Tom.
Hi, Ryo.
Do you know any place where sailors hang out?
Sailors? Yeah, I do. They hang out at bars. They always start street fights when they're drunk, you know. I can't stand them, man.
Which bar do they hang out at?
I don't know. I'm broke. I can't afford to drink.
Oh well, later.
Now, it's in the acting department that Shenmue arguably best demonstrates its age. The games were renowned for their dreadful scripts and performances even when they were new, but in an age where seasoned Hollywood actors are stepping into the voice booth, Yokosuka's cast of colourful characters are flabbergasting to say the least. There is unquestionably a comedic charm to the way in which the lines are written and delivered, but if you grew up on the series, then you'll probably appreciate that from a nostalgic point of view. Even newcomers who approach with the right context may not be too deterred, but the voice acting is definitely rough, and if you're playing without headphones, then be prepared for some funny looks from family members and friends. But the actual voice acting itself is the least of Shenmue's worries, because the quality of the audio is also absolutely awful. Now, it would appear that Sega could only get its hands on the compressed sound files, which means that every line of dialogue is accompanied by a harsh buzzing sound, as well as intense sibilance. Now, it's something that you become accustomed to the more that you play, but it's a shame that higher quality recordings couldn't be sourced. Fortunately, the superb soundtrack has made the transition in better condition, and it sounds just as wonderful today as it always did. There is an issue with some sound effects not triggering properly, although I'm informed that's going to be patched in time for launch. So yeah, that is a bit of an issue, but hopefully that gets fixed by the time that you're all playing it. In the case of the first game specifically, the developers added a teleport option to the Hazuki residence, which reduces the need for backtracking. Now, this is a feature that can be toggled off as well, and to be perfectly honest, I'd recommend that you do, because it's easy to miss out on some optional scenes and quests if you decide to take advantage of it. None of the other quality of life improvements that were implemented in Shenmue II, such as the ability to skip time, have made the transition into the original, so you're still going to find yourself wandering around waiting for events to occur. But in my opinion, the glacial pacing was always a big part of the franchise's unique charm, and as was the case in the early 2000s, it's something that newcomers are going to find they either love or despise. The first hours of the inaugural installment are spent doing very little indeed. You'll be jogging around Dobuita, talking to shopkeepers, and searching for clues about a mysterious man named Lan Di, who violently kills Ryo's father at the very beginning of the game. Very little happens in the opening hours, frankly, and while the breadcrumbs keep the story progressing, it's all designed to embed you into its grounded world. So, for those of you who don't know, Yu Suzuki dubbed the genre as free, and that stands for Full Reactive Eyes Entertainment. Now today we'd probably refer to it as open world, although there's something specifically unique about Shenmue in that it encompasses elements of PC adventure games, like objects can be picked up and examined, drawers can be opened and investigated, and paintings can be taken off the walls, often for no reason at all. Most impressive of all of this is that the title's NPCs go about their business independently. They open their shops at different times of the day, they head out for lunch when the pangs of hunger take them, and they close up as the evening approaches. In an age of Bethesda RPGs and Grand Theft Auto 5, it's perhaps not that draw-dropping overall, but it really was back then, and even now it makes for an immersive backdrop that really draws you in. Make no mistake though, Shenmue is an inconsistent game, and while its successor is much better paced, it's still very much an acquired taste. There are moments in the first game where you literally have to kill in-game time, and while the world is populated with arcades to attend and parking lots to train in, the reality is that you'll be setting down your controller and waiting for real-world minutes to tick by until you can actually continue with your journey. It's bizarre, but the game's unflinching commitment to the mundane is something that I personally like. There's literally one side quest where you're tasked with buying a waiter a soft drink from a vending machine, and the pair pass the time by chatting about how busy the restaurant's been. It's really that kind of game where the most mundane, simple things take up a lot of your time. Now, as far as I can tell, with regards to the port itself, zero work's been put into upgrading the textures and the geometry, so it still very much looks like a Dreamcast game, just running at a higher resolution if you take advantage of the feature that I mentioned earlier. The character models can be downright frightening at times, but the art style definitely holds up, and there is a beauty to the scale of the world, even if it's as dingy as I described earlier on in the video. It runs nicely too, and the loading times are lightning fast now that there's no GD-ROMs for the Dreamcast to grind. Even though there have been minor efforts to modernise the control scheme, so the original game, if you don't know, had you control Ryo with the D-pad, which was strange even then, so controlling him even today on the DualShock 4 with the slight improvements that they've made is still very cumbersome, and it's difficult to get about in tight spaces. But all in all, it's surreal revisiting Shenmue on modern hardware, truly surreal. I've been utterly enamoured with it this weekend. I'm glued to it, I can't put it down, but I need to process and determine still how much nostalgia is playing a part of that for me. The games are definitely very playable even in 2018. They're clunky and cumbersome, but this is a no-frills port that's been very sturdily assembled from what I can tell so far. But the question is, if you're from a generation that didn't experience the games in their original guise, it's difficult to determine whether you'll actually jive with them. They were divisive back in the day, and without context, the issues will be accentuated in 2018. So, should you play some? Yes, no, I can't quite make up my mind, but one thing is for sure, if you're a lifetime Shenmue fan like I am, you're going to get an absolute kick out of replaying these. But let me know whether you'll be picking up Shenmue I and II in the comments section below. Are you going to be playing these games for the first time, or are you a veteran of the franchise that originally enjoyed them on the Dreamcast and later the Xbox? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, cheers.
What is it, kid?
I need to ask you something.
Forget it! Who the hell do you think you're talking to? You frontin' with me?
I've got a question for you.
Who you kidding? Kiss off, twit!